welcome to another edition of the A2Pcast. This is part 2 of our Doctor Who 50th anniversary discussion. The first one was our predictions, and now I am back here again with Michael Schupsky, and we are going to talk about our thoughts after we've watched the 50th anniversary, and we'll compare them with some of our predictions, if we can remember them, and see how close we were to some of our ideas. We were pretty close on some things, and not totally wrong on other things. Some of our hopes and dreams were smashed. But let's get right down into it. I will pass it off to Mike, and we'll just ask overall opinions. Favorable?
The whole thing? Oh my god, yes. I was shocked by how much I loved watching this thing from beginning to end. It was a perfect 50th anniversary. It felt like a 50th anniversary, but it also felt like a classic Who episode, which is exactly what I would want. And all of the doctors in the same room, in the same space, seemed like it could have been bad, but it turned out to be easily the best part of the episode. And I overall just solid. I loved it.
I, of course, agree. I was really, really, really pleased with it. I think I'm not the only person to notice it, but it wasn't. It took until the ending to really solidify
what it was about.
Yeah. It did feel like lost in the middle, and when you get to the end, you realize it wasn't lost in the middle. It was following the plan the whole time, but it did. Halfway through, I was a little worried that it wasn't going to be great. I was like, well, this is all right, but maybe we'll get back to it. But then when it all comes together, you realize the structure of the whole thing. You're like, I see. Yeah. No, that was brilliant.
I was loving the whole thing from beginning to end. Like I said, I loved the middle act because the way I see it, it's a typical Doctor Who episode sandwiched in between the stuff that we really came to watch with the 50th. The Time War, the War Doctor, all of that stuff kind of happens at the beginning and the end, like where they actually really discuss it and where the really big stuff happens. But in the middle, it just set up like a straight up Doctor Who episode that when you said, like, it takes some strands and it takes some things that you can apply to the bigger picture. But, that's how any Doctor Who episode is set up. It takes this form of just a straight up Monster of the Week, but it also has these little strands of an overarching theme, and it pulled it all together beautifully.
It was what I will bring my musical analogies that come up every so often. This was a ternary form of an episode, ABA, pretty brilliant example. It could have been a Baroque suite.
I think you're going to have to explain with me, a lowly non-music person.
Ternary form. It's just ABA, you know.
Okay. Oh, okay.
The letters correspond. You know, something, another thing, the original thing, yet again.
I see. Okay. I'll buy that. I'll buy that as well.
It wasn't quite, because it was so nicely sectioned off. The way you explained it too, I think it really works. It helps you to visualize how the episode works, to get that 3-act structure, but the first act and the last act
very, very much
are kind of the same thing, but have just been split in half.
Yeah, they've been split in half. It's a little detour between the two, but
not necessarily a condensed version that would make it a rounded binary, which is not. I think it's a ternary. It is not a rounded binary.
Okay. I also just really loved how funny it was and how much fun you had
glorious.
Watching it.
The gift sets that have just exploded. They're all just full of wonderful things, like the round things.
The round things. Oh, the round things.
Love the round things.
What are the round things?
No idea. The timey-wimey, the pointing Sonics at things. Every joke was, it was glorious. Gloriously written comedy.
And John Hurt was fantastically funny in it, which is one of my... I wouldn't say I worried about it, but one of my predictions that went completely wrong, and I was glad it went completely wrong, was I was expecting the John Hurt Doctor to be the big bad character of the 50th and be a serious, like, brooding doctor, and then David Tennant and Matt Smith had to face him somehow. But that's not what happened at all.
Not at all. And I don't think anyone can fault you for thinking that, because that's exactly how it was set up.
The trailer really set that up, but yeah, it set it up because I think they really did want you to think that way, that this man is responsible for so much death and destruction. But then when the 50th actually comes to you and you see him as he is, he's like, he's just the Doctor. He's just any other Doctor.
He really is just the Doctor. And like I was just saying, a point I want to make is how I think important it was for that from like a narrative kind of perspective, because we were really hand in hand with the Doctor in that view of him. We only knew him through the Doctor, and so of course our perspective of this War Doctor character was tainted by the only thing we knew through the glasses of the Doctors that we've seen.
Yeah, the way they talked about him just even more reinforced the idea that when we indeed get to this man, he's going to be this epitome of evil, almost like the antimatter to the Doctor. And I was incredibly pleasantly surprised how John Hurt pulled it off as like just he's the Doctor.
He really was the Doctor, and I think it was so important for us to come into it thinking that, because it really shined a light on the Doctor's character to see how wrong he was, and that was so beneficial to seeing him overcome this problem, because we had the same problem. We didn't have to just think, oh, I can imagine how that could be hard. No, we were right there with him. Yeah. We also had to realize that there was nothing different about the War Doctor from the other Doctors. Yeah. He really was the same person, and they all had to kind of accept that.
I mean, the fact that he remembered all the way up until Matt Smith anyway, like how many children were on the planet that he was essentially going to destroy, like definitely told you that he wasn't just a Doctor who did what needed to be done. He had it weighed heavy on his conscience in what he had to do. The John Hurt Doctor wasn't just a mindless killing machine. He was, he was like every other iteration. He had his faults, he had his pros, he had his cons, and he was an incredibly well-developed character in just one episode.
Just one, beginning to end. It was. We run
the gamut. We run the gamut of his existence from John Hurt War Doctor to, well, you see half through his regeneration into Christopher Eccleston, which I really was hoping like Chris would just show up for 5 seconds.
It's all even 5 seconds on set. Is that so? Is it really going to derail your career? No one will ever give you a non-sci-fi job ever if you show up for 5 more seconds. But no.
No, sadly not. Another thing I really liked. We finally came face to face with the decision that he had to make in relation to the Time War, and I like that we got a lot of the time. We got a lot more of the Time War than we had before, but it's still somewhat shrouded in mystery. They didn't just gorge us on nonstop Time War stuff the whole episode.
When we see him regenerate in the Day of the Doctor minisode, the reflection they do give us is a young version of John Hurt. So he lived. He lived in an entire lifetime fighting that war.
He's fighting this war for so long, and the fact that we just get the last day of the Time War, but you still see all the death and destruction and chaos and all the stuff that goes along with that. But it was still restrained, is what I would say.
Really restrained, but it was a streamlined episode. It was Stephen Moffat. I think it's safe to say Stephen Moffat's a pretty good writer, especially if Stephen Moffat were to have a fault. It might be that he is too streamlined, and he knows exactly what he wants to get across in a given episode. And sometimes people, they throw claims at him that he leaves plot threads dangling and there's plot holes and things. And occasionally there are little plot holes, but it's only because he said the plot hole is less important than getting the emotional truth of the scene.
See, I used to bitch and moan about that stuff, but that's when you realize Doctor Who isn't really about, like, I don't know, the minutia of everything. Sometimes, most of the time it's not about the minutia. And actually, I would say Stephen Moffat sometimes gets bogged down in the minutia and bogged down in trying to like create this incredibly complex ball of yarn. But like when he gets down to what is important, like Doctor Who is all about giving you a sense of wonder and a sense of like amazement most of the time, and like, that's what this 50th did perfectly.
Yeah, and like I think there's an emotional truth to everything, and he always hits it. Watch through some of the early episodes of season 5, and some of them as episodes themselves aren't that good. But what is good is watching the relationship between the Doctor and Amy evolve, and that's what's important.
Yeah.
So I will literally hurt other things in order to. If you'll get one thing out of this episode, and you will watch that relationship, and it's okay. So the story doesn't make so much sense, but who cares? Because we weren't actually. The setting was merely coincidental versus what we're trying to do. And so, yeah, this continued in that line of his style of writing and just being really streamlined. It got right to the point of everything on his checklist of what he wanted to do.
It didn't waste any time. It got right down to it, and yeah, I know some people have been saying that they found the middle section, I wouldn't say boring, but like a little lackluster. I just loved it the whole way through. I felt like there was nothing wasted. There was nothing wrong with it. I think it was a constant thrill ride, nonstop.
Yeah, I mean, it was really. It's a 50th anniversary. I know it wouldn't have been appropriate to have a 50th anniversary celebration and focus only on this obscure storyline that's only been in existence since 2005. Like that would not have been. It was not right, and so he couldn't. He knew he couldn't just do it like that, and so he kept filling it in with all those references in that classic episode that happens right in the middle. So that's the episode as a whole, and we talked about how much we loved seeing John Hurt and their chemistry on screen. The three of them together was wonderful.
Yeah, that was.
Their scenes of figuring things out together, using the sonic screwdrivers
in
through centuries, and also things that. Here's another tip of the hat to Stephen Moffat. So many little fan service things in the first 40 minutes of the episode that you're like, oh, isn't that funny? And then the finale came around and he said, oh, no, that wasn't funny. That was foreshadowing. Holy shit.
That was actually important. Yeah.
Like, that whole screwdriver thing actually just a recreation of what the finale is going to be so that it's already been implanted in your head. My mouth hit the floor. I was all thumbs up. Speaking of mouth hit the floor, that Peter Capaldi.
Peter Capaldi.
Oh, my God.
We see his old eyes.
I just screamed. So it was the most exciting thing.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And it's I think he's going to have an easier transition, I think, than any of the other doctors we've had recently, because there's always those big protests against things. I mean, I don't know if that many people protested against Christopher Eccleston leaving in place of David Tennant. So maybe people loved it when David Tennant showed up. But I know maybe it's just one. Okay, maybe only one time in the history of things that people really put about it. But it was significant that people really rebelled against Matt Smith. And they did not think that he was this big, young, goofy shitball who had no business standing in the TARDIS. Yeah. Which is... At this point, I think we can tell clearly inaccurate.
It's a moot point.
But Peter Capaldi doesn't look like he's going to run into those problems.
The other thing I liked in that the way they kept this 50th simple, it makes it a lot easier for the Christmas special that is going to be the Regeneration episode. Like, I was worried that this was going to be a big moment, like an end of time type of thing. And then my question was, okay, but how does the Christmas special live up to that? It would just feel like a downer almost.
Right.
But now it's not going to feel like a downer. It's going to feel just like a perfect extension of
everything that needed to happen. Yeah. And as that 10-second teaser, silence will fall. Finally, there are those answers, the silence, and this whole, from the first episode on, the 11th Doctor story arcs are going to bring themselves.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the Christmas special this time. I'm sure it'll be just as well. But I'm glad. We talked about this before with like Breaking Bad. It wasn't a rocket ship. It didn't just go up and then you can't possibly reach that height again with the Christmas special. But now it's like perfectly doable, and I'm really excited for the Christmas.
It's going to be great. Although we also have to. We shouldn't talk too much about the Christmas special. We can have another whole. We can have a whole discussion on predictions for the Christmas special. But we did get to see the payoff that we mentioned in the last podcast about this being kind of that paradigm shift for the Doctor. And that really was his whole driving force was that decision he made to kill everyone everyone he loved, and then ever since then it's always been the man who regrets and the man who forgets. The man who regrets and the man who forgets, and now all of that has been resolved. Perfectly resolved. And the Doctor has like this new slate. The man who's had this brooding, dark undertone can have that hope, the same hope that he said that he would give to Gallifrey. But, I mean, really, we can just kind of see him talking about himself now. Yeah. So Peter Capaldi, I thought he could be a curmudgeonly old man. But given this, I would expect Peter Capaldi to almost be the happiest of all the Doctors.
Happy.
Unless, of course, yes. I mean, We're just going to replace it with a new tragedy for the Christmas special, which
Sure,
wouldn't be surprising. Something else to be upset about.
Sure, why not? Let's just give him another burden to put on his shoulders.
More burdens on his shoulders.
Burdens on his shoulders. But yeah, again, we'll get into Capaldi.
Yeah, we'll get into Capaldi in the Christmas special at a later date, and I'm sure we're all going to squeal like little girls. Let's talk for a second about Rose, because we talked about Rose last week. We wondered, how is she going to come back? And she looked like she was getting all bad wolf in these pictures and videos. But how is that going to play into her regular one? Where we didn't predict was that regular Rose wasn't going to show up at all. There was no instance of regular Rose. I might have brought that up, that how can they, because
how can it be in the same...
There was so much going on, we just have to go back really far to see a regular episode. But then no, and even I read another interview with Stephen Moffat today, and he said that he really didn't want to bring Rose proper into it, because he said that was Russell's. And she began and she ended with David Tennant and with Christopher Eccleston into that last bit with David Tennant, and that's it. Like, her story is done, and he felt it wouldn't have been right for him to go in and meddle with her story. So he doesn't, but he does use the Bad Wolf. And this is where...
In a clever way.
We were just having a discussion. We're going to reignite that discussion right here. She shows up, and she claims to be the interface for the weapon that's going to kill everyone.
The weapon's interface uses memories, or in this case, future memories of his mind to project onto the thing. And I think that's how it was explained in the 50s.
Yeah, and that's how it's explained. But I really don't think that that's the whole story. It's not just any old computer program, any old sentient computer program masquerading as bad. I don't think you can just masquerade as Bad Wolf and then also happen to have the ability to stop time, open fissures in time, and pull people through them, transport people around the galaxy at whim, and read thoughts. I think it's too much of a stretch to say that, oh, by the way, there are two of those beings in the universe, and we've never told you about the one that we're telling you about now. So I think that was, in fact, the Bad Wolf the entire time. Now, whether the moment, as the weapon is called, and the Bad Wolf are the same thing, I think that is something that we could consider and probably say is accurate, since we're just told this is a weapon that the ancient Time Lords had in their vault. No real explanation of who built it, where it came from, why does it have its own sentience, and the Bad Wolf, you could do anything with it as a storyteller. I mean, from the beginning of time to the end of time.
It had been so long since I had thought about Bad Wolf, but yeah, I don't know. I wasn't sold when we initially talked about it, but now that you're saying all these things, I'm starting to nod my head in agreement a little bit more.
I hope so.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just one of those things we're gonna have to see if we get more information on it. But yeah, I did like the reappearance of the Bad Wolf, Billie Piper. I thought that was very, very wonderful.
It was very good. She looked pretty good with that dark eyeliner.
Yeah, it was
enticing for a boy.
It was a shame that David Tennant never actually saw her. It was always just John Hurst's
It's true.
mind.
Is that actually echoes of Battlestar Galactica? Really?
Yeah. A blonde that no one else could see,
just whispering in your mind and orchestrating things. But yeah, and I think it's important to say that it was the Bad Wolf, and I think it's a more beautiful romantic notion to say that he didn't really have to meddle with Rose's story, but this is still Rose kind of reaching through time to help the Doctor in his most the hour of his most need, the defining moment.
Yeah, like you said, this is a moment that's defined him for the whole revival of the series. And yeah, the fact that you came all the way back was really nice. So we got the conclusion of this. We're going to get the conclusion of Matt Smith. And then when Peter Capaldi comes on board, again, I don't want to get too much into this, but I just want to speculate so we can think about it at a future time. What is going to be his thing?
His thing?
The Time War is, for all intents and purposes, I'm sure we'll hear more about it, but for all intents and purposes, it's come to a close. Well, it's wrapped up nicely.
Well, I think those last moments, Matt Smith's monologue over that stand in a line with all the doctors, that I think we'll see that his... unless we get more which I'm sure we're going to have tons of tragedy in the Christmas special, but his his whole motivation and reason to be is kind of becoming now finding Gallifrey.
Yeah.
He is not, he's no longer just the last of the Time Lords, but he is still a Time Lord without a home.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's almost, in fact, the more I think about it, the more that's an even better motivation. That's actually a journey.
Because you're trying.
Before it was just regret. It was something that had happened that couldn't be changed. That he just had. We had to watch him live with it.
Now
but this is something that can be fixed. It's something that can be done, and it's something that he wants to do.
Yeah.
However impossible it might seem.
Mm-hmm. And he's given a new sense. I think I can see what you mean by Peter Capaldi's going to be a lot more hopeful, enthusiastic are the words I'm looking for, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he has a goal now that he can control his own destiny, and he knows he fixed the one thing he always regretted, and I don't know. I do think that will be something interesting. There will be, of course, more tragedy, more things for him to brood on, but the fact of that as like a buoyant part of his psyche now is interesting. And the fact that it's coming with Peter Capaldi, who we all thought was going to be a curmudgeon old man.
Because that's what... But I knew... In my mind, I knew, like... Well, you can't just... That's not Stephen Moffat's style.
Yeah.
To do exactly what you expect. Oh, nay. Let's get the best example of a curmudgeon-y, old, angry Scottish man and make him act like the happiest doctor that's ever existed. And I think it'll be wonderful because... it'll just be a perfect moment of subverting our expectations. And before we finish up, I do want to mention the one thing we haven't talked about, an integral part of the finale. I still like Kate Lethbridge-Stewart. I think she's a great character. Nice callback to the old episodes.
Yeah, that was a nice little...
I just think she just looks good on screen. She acts good. She interacts. She's great. I enjoy every scene I see with her in it.
Good.
But I want to get to Clara, because Clara was so great in this too.
Yeah.
And I was surprised by how it really feels like now we've had her for so long.
Yeah.
But she's only been around for half of a season.
Yeah. She was great because it cemented the fact that in a show like this, you need the human element almost as much as you need the alien in the box stuff. So, yeah, anyway, yeah, you can keep going.
I just think you're right, and as with any good story, it's the companion that has to be there to show him that this is the way you can do it. It was, that's a whole new topic. We can't really open that up right now, but the importance of a companion, especially when you're watching the story happen, and it just seemed wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They were about to do something that just seemed wrong, and I was like, are they really going to go through with it? Because this feels untrue.
Yeah.
And then the companion has to come in and say, just stop it, because this is, and that's it was like the most perfect example yet seen in this entire rehash of the series. That is the companion's job.
The most essential role of the companion is to, bring the Doctor back from, not just have us relate to the Doctor, because we're all humans, we're not Time Lords, so we need to meet someone in there who's going to relate and see it through our eyes in a way. But yeah, the fact that they also can be there when the Doctor is at his most trying moments and bring him back from the brink sometimes.
Back from the brink. That's it. Yes, that's a perfect term. And 11 and Clara are they're so close right now. I'm thinking that no one could ever replace Amy, but they are so close, and they're close. And I do think they're close in a way that we have not yet seen. None of the other companions have, almost as if this is the closest the Doctor has actually allowed a companion to get. Now, Rose, okay, we've got a lot of stuff going on in there, but even then, it wasn't Ten himself that really got that. Even then, he couldn't let her get that close to him, but 11 seems to have no barriers left with her. And I think, I should write a whole article about this. There are some connections with River and Clara that he is still hiding underneath his magic toolbox hat. That analogy failed. He's gonna pull a river rabbit out of his hat in these next few, and probably sometime in the Christmas special, and we're gonna have to watch it develop over Peter Capaldi. But there is a lot more happening here, and I think there are. Watch this special again, and just find these tiny little hints, because I don't think there's a single line she says that isn't a very, very calculated move, planting seeds for the story that she's about to embark on with our next Doctor. So that is all we have time for today, and I am Josh Hartman, and this is Mike Schupsky.
That's me.
That's him. And we will talk to you later in the week with our next topic for the A2Pcast. Send us money. The A2Pcast. And we'll see you next time.